Okay, so when I met with the contractor, basically what we went over, just to point out to you and show you what we're talking about, is this picture on the right-hand side is looking underneath the back deck over here under this lattice work in the deck area. What he had recommended doing is this whole area needs to be dug up because it's two center blocks high and it's not at the floor level. So the water's seeping in right here, as well as when you look up here at the vinyl siding underneath the deck, there was never any flashing put on the deck so that the water ran over. And so what he's saying is behind this vinyl is exposed framing, which makes sense to me that if we look over here on this left-hand photo, that this deck is definitely at the kitchen floor level. Water hits the deck, runs back up against the wall, and then the deck is attached to the house because the boards are pulled off. And over here on the right, you can see where the vinyl siding is. So we've got water coming in through the deck area and most likely running down the wall into this area down here. He was also talking about digging this up, putting a rubber membrane in and waterproofing this wall and sloping this so that the water runs both left and right off of the side of the house. Now, I didn't know a lot about drainage, didn't think about it, so I sat around and I did a lot of reading, and essentially what I came up with on this, and it's what I believe is going on, is that this really, to go at this and to fix this problem permanently, you've got to do something quite aggressively. So I'm going to point out and show you something. Started looking at this, and what I realized was that nobody said anything about gutters. Now, if you look at the roof of the house, you can see up here on the right-hand side that the right side roof is definitely a lot, there's a lot more length there on the right than there is the left. There's no gutters. So one of the things that's happening is water's coming off the roof and it's landing down here on this stone area that is has a lot of mortar in the joints. It's basically solid. It's not going to absorb the water. So all the water is running downhill in sheets. Another thing to look at is you can see this black pipe running out of the ground. This black pipe most likely is fed to French drains up in the parking lot. The parking lot slopes so that everything runs in this corner and then runs down this pipe and out onto this sloped area. Now, something that the contractor noticed while he was here was he couldn't figure out why, if you look on the side of the house right here underneath the meter box, that the side of the house was taken off and there essentially was almost like a small retaining wall on the right-hand side. There's flashing on the top. What I've figured out has probably happened, and you can see it by this picture right here. So it's not a very clear one, but you'll notice all the mortar in these rocks over here. You can see all the concrete, but if you look on the left-hand side, you can really see what's going on. It's someone has had to bust this up. You can see how these rocks right here have all been removed, and that this little piece of concrete footing that's been put in, as well as this flashing on the top, seems like it was done to try and address this issue. So what apparently is happening is water's running off the roof, it's running down the hill, it's also running out of this pipe, and all this water is being applied to this concrete area right here, and it's seeping back in the house. Now, my guess is that part of the flooding that occurred in the property, this was some of it. It was also on the back of the house. Because if we look at this picture, this was while we were there, you can see water. You see this dampness in the grout line. This is the bathroom door downstairs within about 4 or 5 feet of this area right here on the side. So while we were there, it's raining. Water runs off the side of the house. It hits the ground. It runs back in the house. Another thing that's going on that the builder has suggested is all this down here, this has got to be dug up because floor height is really down here in this bottom right-hand corner. So back here on this end, this is not at floor height. You can tell that we're off by about 2 feet of floor height. So realistically what needs to be done is this needs to be dug down 2 feet. There needs to be concrete poured, maybe French drains put in, rubber membranes. It's a fairly large amount of work that's going to have to be done to make this straight. Now, one of the things that might have also caused this piece to be added was this roof now has a gutter. I don't know how long the gutters have been there, but if this was built without a gutter, you can tell that this roof is sloping water right back at the house and on this slab right here. So the biggest things that I see that need to be addressed here are this deck really needs to be removed, and this needs to have flashing added to it. That needs to be repaired so that water's not running down the interior of the wall. A whole back end back here needs to be dug down to the foundation. Need to have some type of concrete sidewalk or something removing the water from the house, rubber membrane put in. As I started thinking about this, I kind of started going, I wonder if these items line up. And I don't know anything about watershed and water flow, but it just kind of seems to make sense that if we're looking at this slab right here, that a couple of the things that the home inspector pointed out was that right here underneath this deck railing is the old retaining wall that most likely there were a set of steps that led down to the lake at some point. And so there's a couple of issues with retaining walls that are collapsing. One is over here, and one is underneath this kitchen area. And I kind of started to look at it and think about it and say, okay, what's going on? Well, one of the things we know that's going on is that if you look down here, you can tell where this concrete is cracked. And what I think is happening is that all this watershed coming off the roof and all the watershed coming out of the parking area is running down this slab. It's running into the end of the house right here where this has been dug up. And when the water hits here, it has nowhere to go. So what it's doing is it's flowing straight into this deck area, and it's washing and eroding the soil that's under the deck right here. And that's where this cracking is coming from. If you look back at the home inspector's report, there's two different areas. One over here on the deck, which you've already talked about, and the other is, which we can see right here on the right, this is the holding wall for this outdoor kitchen area on the front side. You can see that the soil behind it is pushing this post out behind it, and what's holding it in is this. But if you look up in here, this concrete area was the original retaining wall that outdoor kitchen was built on top of. So if you were to look up under there, what you'd find is this outdoor retaining area. This retaining wall under the outdoor kitchen is actually breaking and falling forward, and I think that's happening because all of the watershed is flowing down and flowing into the deck, and it's eroding everything underneath it. So I do feel like in the future there are going to be some issues there. Maybe not now, but this does kind of seem to make sense to me. See, this roof line, it ends right here. This is right at the kitchen area, and if we go back and we look at the back of the house, what you'll see is this roof stops way short of this, just outside of the screen porch. Now over here in this picture on your right hand side, what we're looking here, this area is lined up almost exactly with this roof line. So without any gutters on the house, the water's running off the roof and it's accumulating on the deck, which is just right here, and I think that it's eroding the soil underneath it, and it's causing this retaining wall to collapse. I guess for me, what I would really like to see, and to keep us in the deal, just to address these things, we need to work on the deck. The deck needs to be flashed. It needs to be fixed appropriately, as well as this whole area behind the house needs to be dug out. This side area needs to be addressed. In front of the kitchen area needs to be addressed because all this water is flowing downhill. The same thing with the retaining wall and the gutter flow as far as where the water's going off of this outdoor kitchen area. The house needs to have gutters added all the way around on both sides and drained appropriately so that we're not running into this problem. I think there may be, this drain right here probably needs to be addressed. It probably needs to be tied into the gutter coming down the house so that all this water goes underground and is then probably pumped out in front of the house near the lake somewhere. So essentially this entire perimeter around the house, and I don't see any way to do it that doesn't involve going around the entire home except where that deck is, because where that Mitsubishi Mr. Slim unit is, that was added, concrete was poured, and my guess is that there is some leaking going on there as well, because the concrete's probably at ground level. I don't have any pictures of that area to see. It's probably not flashed. Now that's on the exterior of the home. On the interior, we already know that we're going to have to drop the sheetrock from floor to ceiling in the property. My guess is that it needs to be done on the side where the Mitsubishi Slim unit is too. I'm also curious, when the home flooded, how far did it flood, and what kind of damage did that cause? Is there mold growing, or is there mildew, whatever, up in the front of the property, where that would have hit the baseboard? I don't know how deep it got, but from the mud standing on the floor, it seems like there was quite a bit of water in the basement. I think that's something that would probably be well worth taking a look into would be to get Trotter and an engineer and a contractor out to the property if this is something that everybody feels like they want to go forward with, and everybody kind of put their heads together and come up with what they think the best game plan is. But I really do think that just using the Trotter system is not the best way to go. I just don't feel real comfortable with saying, hey, we're okay with this much water coming into the property because we have one of these Trotter systems installed. I really am not buying that that's the best thing um, for me or for anybody else who I would resell this property to in the future. But I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and thank you so much.